Welcome to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast with your host, Tony Guerra. The Pharmacy Leaders Podcast is a member of the Pharmacy Podcast Network, with interviews and advice on building your professional network, brand, and a purposeful second income from students, residents, and innovative professionals.
Welcome back to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast. I'm so excited to have Brandon Dyson back to help us out, and we're going to have a back and forth as if I was the residency director or interviewer, and he'll be the interviewee. But he's not only going to just talk about the answers, he's going to give the rationale for them. And a number of these questions come from his book, but I've thrown him a couple curveballs, and I know you're going to enjoy this episode. But let's get into some questions because I'm excited to see how you tackle them. And so let's actually start with a softball. Well, we'll call it a softball.
Let's also preface. I have no idea which questions he's going to ask me, and I did not prepare answers, which you should prepare. Let me also say that. So anyway, yeah, let's do this.
Okay. Describe a time when you decided on your own that something needed to be done and you took on the task to get it done.
So this is all about, so what I'll do when I answer these, if you're cool with that, Tony, I will kind of give you an example answer if I was a student, and then I'll kind of describe my thought process in that answer. Is that okay?
Yeah, I checked the podcast manual. It's okay. So we're good.
Sweet.
We're good. Did not want to violate the podcast rules, but I was checking the podcast scroll. It's very old, hundreds of years old.
Podcast law is very, you really don't want to run afoul of podcast law.
Yeah. Okay. So a time when you decided on your own. Now, before you answer the question, let's say I'm someone that's anxious, freaking out, borderline ADD as this person's asking the question. Is it appropriate to write the question down as they're asking it?
You're probably not going to have a piece of paper like at this point for most of these interview questions, because this might be happening literally while you're eating lunch. Maybe not this severe, but it's not inappropriate to write it down, but you probably won't need to. Probably what will be better is if you need to think of an answer, you can reflect it. You can be like, so a time when I, take a moment, rephrase it a little. Mm-hmm. You can also say, let me think about that for a moment. Do not spend 4 minutes at that point. That's just going to be weird, but take a moment, and think about it. And again, most of these questions, unless they're just trying to have fun with you, like I got asked, if you were a melon, what type of melon would you like? They're just trying to mess with you at that point in time. And
then you're thinking, oh gosh, was that a fruit, a vegetable, a melon? Yeah. Was that a melon?
What does it mean if I want to say cantaloupe?
And they're sitting there doing that quiz online like, oh, he is a melon. He's a melon.
Right. And at that point, they're seeing like questions like that. They're like, do you have a sense of humor? And like, how do you roll with it? If we mess with you a little, like, anyway, I've used a great tactic of stalling in this question.
You have. Okay. So obviously not getting the thing done I'm asking you, which is just answer the freaking first question, but describe a time you decided on your own that something needed to be done and you took on the task to get it done.
So this happened I was interning for Walgreens, and I noticed that we had there was a big order that got put away. They were very busy, backed up. And I was an intern, and my technical job at this particular, at least on this shift, I was supposed to be manning the registers and doing flu shots. But it just, someone called out. And, we were very backed up, very busy. The pharmacist was having a hard time keeping up with filling. And so I was able to go in and kind of very in between. And I made sure to keep an eye on the register and with flu shots and everything. And I helped put away the order and helped fill meds. And it was just really doing everything I could to kind of keep the flow going. That was Brandon's sort of somewhat answer. So thought process going into that answer would be you want to showcase that you take initiative. You see something that needs to get done for whatever it is. It doesn't need to be for that didn't actually happen in my Walgreens experience. I was completely made up on the spot. But the idea is like, are you self-motivated? Do you need to be told? Do you need to have your boss or your manager be like, okay, go do this thing. You finish that thing, great, go do this thing. You want to write it. You want to come up with an answer that shows you just taking initiative, that you're a self-motivated self-starter. And if you notice a thing, whether that be, hey, I didn't realize like on this oncology rotation what RCHOP was. And so I went and looked up RCHOP and what kind of cancer it was treated for, because I saw in the medical note that the patient received 3 cycles of RCHOP. So far, did you go and look up what that was and what it was for, versus like then versus instead of asking me, your preceptor, hey, you got RCHOP, what's RCHOP? Right? Like, it's looking for, do you take initiative, basically?
I don't know if they have highlights still in the dentist's office, but there used to be a Goofus and Gallant. And like Goofus would Goofus sits and doesn't answer the door. Gallant gets up and answers the door. And really, if you can, instead of, saying, oh my gosh, I've got to come up with this really great scenario, all you have to do is just say, I saw somebody had gum on their shoe. I told them they had gum on their shoe. I helped them throw it away. It's like it sounds like it's common sense, but I feel like the kind of A+ type student is going to try to make a huge deal out of something that's just, are you going to do things that you're supposed to do?
A word of caution too is make sure that you don't come across as standoffish, like, well, this other person wasn't doing their job and it felt like I needed to get done, so I did it, because that really, like, that takes the shift of you being a self-motivated leader and you complaining and just throwing shade on other people, and that's don't do that. So be very careful how you phrase it. Okay.
All right. Well, let's go to another question. I think that format's going to work really well. Let's talk about a difficult work-school situation when your workload was heavy and how you handled it. So let's say that in your CV you have a 16-hour-a-week job at the hospital while you were a P3 because you had to support yourself for the most part to go through school. And you weren't given a tremendous amount of scholarship money. And so 16 hours a week is how much you had to work.
Okay. So, I mean, this is an easy one for anyone in pharmacy school, especially if you're working. So I was working. I had to do I had signed up for 16 hours a week. So that was my whole weekend. I would work 2 8-hour shifts, or sometimes I would be off on Sunday and I would work 2 4-hour shifts in my evenings during the week. So 8 and 8, and I'd work a Saturday. This happened a particular week where I had to work Tuesday and Thursday night from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. And I had exams on Wednesday and I had exams on Thursday. So I had exams both days. These were really hard PT exams, really difficult subject matter. And so I have to study, but I've also made a commitment to the hospital. Not only do I need the money, but I made a commitment. I signed up to do it. No one, and so what I had to do was really try to, in the hospital, I work in a level 1 trauma center as an intern. So we're very, very busy. We're always stocking Omnicells, or, that's what I was doing this particular week. And it was just it was a completely full patient load. And so really, the way I had to prioritize it was I mapped out my week basically. So I said, okay, here are my hours. Here's the things that I need to get done. I need to study, I estimated based off of what I've had in school so far, how long I need to study for a given exam. And then I blocked out responsibilities where I couldn't study. So I can't study a Tuesday to Thursday, 4 to 8. Those are out. I can't study, this other time because I'm eating or I'm sleeping or whatever. And then the rest was fitting in times that I could study. I was in class these times I can't study. But what I could do, I woke up a little bit earlier, nothing crazy, but I woke up at 5 a.m. and I studied for an hour or two before school. I studied for a little bit before bed. I had recorded my professor's lectures and I listened to them during my commute to try to absorb more. I read TLDRpharmacy.com because they had this great, had to. So your answer, I guess here, just is that you can make priorities, right? You can prioritize what's most important. You might get, if you don't even have to balance work and school in this kind of a question. You can just say from work, well, I was, let's go back to what I just said for the last answer. I was an intern at Walgreens. There was a tote of things that needed to be put away. There was patients, asking to pick up their prescriptions here. The drive-through was ringing, and I needed to go to the bathroom. Which order did I do those things in, right? And like your answer needs to prioritize the patient first, 100%, right? So you get the guy at the counter, then the drive-through. First, you tell the drive-through guy to hold on, right? There's not necessarily a correct way to answer it, but it just shows that you prioritize what's most important and delegate. If you're unable to finish your task, whatever it is at the hospital, for example, that you pass it on to the next shift. Or to yourself tomorrow, if like, oh, I didn't study enough today, so can I study? I have to study extra time tomorrow.
And it sounds like kind of what, yeah. It sounds like you're talking. What you did that was a little surprising and what impressed me was that you actually went backwards in time. So I feel like most people trying to answer that question would be at the problem and say, okay, well, there was a problem, and how did I deal with it? Instead of saying, well, there's a problem and I had that really tough time, but what I learned was that there was gaps in my planning. So the next time that actually didn't happen because I planned out my week. So I feel like you're going back in time was a really clever way to solve that, to say, I knew this was going to happen. Things don't happen to me intentionally, or things don't happen that way. So you're giving them the impression like, okay, well, that might happen one time to you and it was bad, but it's not going to be as bad next time because you adjust to problems.
Yeah, you learn from past experience, learn from mistakes.
Okay.
If you can showcase that with your answers, awesome.
Okay. Well, let's talk pharmacy specific. So questions on pharmacy topics. This is, and I feel like you could go with well, I wasn't really sure about the job market, so residency is my backup. So I'm really kind of hoping that you take me because I really didn't plan on not getting accepted. So I'm really hoping this works out. But I think that, in terms of, I'll just ask the question, but in terms of just kind of broad picking up what's going on in pharmacy, where do you recommend someone pick up or keep up with pharmacy? You can read that, okay, Amazon's coming, Amazon's not coming. Do you have to be up on the Affordable Care Act? Did you read the 1,000 pages? How up on what's going on in pharmacy do you need to be before you can even answer a question like that?
I think if you just are up enough on the headlines so that you can have a reasonably intelligent conversation, you do not have to be like, oh yeah, well, Amazon's got this 12-point strategy for, gradual entry into the or your answer could be bow down before the Amazon ship and just accept that they will employ us all soon. But
right. Or Alexa will be giving, Alexa's like, I've been answering your questions long enough. It's your turn.
So a question like that about like, where do you see the field of pharmacy going or whatever, saying, like, it's really designed, like, are you interested in the profession? Like, that's really what it is. It's not like testing you of your current event knowledge, or you're a student, you're studying 1 trillion hours a week, right? It's just, are you in? Because if you're interested, you'll pick up on stuff like this, and it's a casual question, honestly, like kind of looking at, do you pay attention to that bubble outside of what you need to know as a student for the next exam, and kind of look at the trends for the profession as a whole. Okay. And then are you thoughtful about it? How do you insert yourself and how do you plan, is residency a part of your strategy for that, or what's your end game,
Okay. Well, this next one's going to be a trap. I just read the first line and I know exactly how you can go wrong on this one. So, what was your favorite IPI rotation and why? What was your least favorite IPI and API rotation and why? This has trap written all over it.
Yeah, you have walked directly. Okay, so my favorite IPI rotation was infectious disease for a few reasons. A large part of it, I absolutely loved the preceptor. She was fantastic. She was very, gave me autonomy while at the same time providing, exact, like perfect real world instruction. She let me do a lot. She let me interview patients. She let me interview physicians and round with the team. And I felt like I really grew a lot in an area that really interested me. And I learned, what kind of, like, if I were to ever be a teacher or a preceptor, I would want to be like her. And I really, really grew to love the area of infectious disease. My least favorite rotation was I had a rotation with the transplant team. A solid organ transplant, very, very busy. And what I disliked, like, the area has never particularly interested me. That was part of it. The team was very large. There were 3 nurse practitioners. There was literally a half a dozen residents plus an attending. There was 2 pharmacy preceptors that were there on it. Like, so it was this giant team walking around the SICU and then walking around the medicine unit afterwards, seeing patients. And, honestly though, I think why it was, I would have done a lot differently with that rotation. So it was my least favorite, but I think I didn't step up enough. I felt very timid as a student. I had no idea even what tacrolimus is, and how to adjust a dose for someone that's 2 months post-transplant, that has now come in with CMV infection. I had no idea what to do. With the multitude now, they've got tuberculosis and they started RIPE therapy. Honestly, I felt like I didn't ask enough questions. I was too timid, and I was so focused on, hey, this is a transplant patient, that I would forget entirely that I knew how to manage their blood sugar that was too high, and I knew that their blood pressure that was too high. So it was my least favorite rotation for the challenge, but I also learned a lot about how I can approach other rotations in it. So what I'm going for there, the trap that you want to avoid is your least favorite, obviously, where you just talk nothing but smack about this preceptor that you had and this team that you had. Even if you feel like it's warranted, it doesn't matter. Now is not the time. You're
pharmacy
interviewing.
Is small. There's chance that the person that you slam is like, oh yeah, I know them. We're buddies. We hang out at ASHP when we meet up together.
Went to school. We graduated together.
Yeah.
So you want to be careful with that. Really, you're taking a negative experience with your least favorite. You want to turn that as much into a positive as possible. What did you learn from it? So just kind of like that last question, you had this terrible experience. Cool. Why was it terrible? And more importantly, like, what did you get out of it? Well,
I guess what I was impressed with is that what you didn't do was say, well, I didn't really have any ones that I didn't like. Yeah. Can you do that? Can you pull that one, or are they? Because I feel like the way that when I was around residency, we all got along really well, and I feel like if all of us were there watching you, we'd be sitting there with our thumbs going down like boo, boo, boo,
popcorn, tomatoes.
Yeah. So
I don't like doing it. I'm not a fan of it. If you do it, have a good reason why, and still talk about, you can, or hedge if you need to. Say, oh, I really liked all of them. I guess a challenge, one that I found particularly challenging and that I think I grew a lot from, and it was really difficult in the time, which was very stressful. You can kind of soften it or hedge it that way if you feel like you have to. You have to get some lesson. It's a complete and total cop out to be like, well, I don't have any. Next question.
But I can see how someone might not. I just talked to Tola Adebanjo from UMES, and she had the Hopkins residency training one. She had APHA, and then she was at the VA near her home where she could spend time with her family. So there was these 3 great rotations that are warm hugs. And, to say least favorite, it would have to be, well, this was maybe the least favorite part of
Right.
one of the rotations, but yeah, never to say no. Now, I did ask you 2 questions in pharmacy, so let's see about your professional growth. So how would you categorize a PGY1 residency? As another learning experience, or as the beginnings of a career path or job, and why?
So both. Honestly, both. I see it as both. It's been kind of said to me throughout school that a residency is equivalent of about 3 years of clinical experience. I've talked to plenty of my peers who've gone through residencies and have an idea of what to expect. And I know it's a very, very challenging year, but that there's a lot of growth. There's a lot of learning involved. There's, as accelerated a growth year as I think you can have in the field of pharmacy. So it's absolutely a learning experience. But at the same time, I'm a licensed pharmacist in a residency, and there's a staffing component to this residency. I'm the pharmacist making the call on if this treatment's appropriate or not. And, I'm going on rounds with the team, and, maybe the first day or first couple of days of a new rotation, or even the first week early on, my preceptor may round with me, but they're going to stop rounding with me based off what I've heard from my friends that have gone through residency anyway. And it's on me to be the pharmacist for the team at that point in time. So it really is the beginnings of a career path. And me personally, I want to kind of transition this into a PGY2 in infectious disease. And so this is a necessary step for that. I can't get a PGY2 without a PGY1, obviously. So I really see this as both.
Now, you didn't do a PGY2, but go ahead and explain your answer.
Yeah, I did not. So again, I'm making these up on the spot. So I'm just explaining what I'm saying with this is, one, yes, your residency is absolutely a learning year, but I think the meat behind this question is, are you ready to take the jump from student to pharmacist? And I'm just speaking completely plainly. It took me almost my entire PGY1 to really get that. Like that was like, my hero's struggle throughout my PGY1 is Brandon really finally ready to be a big boy now,
The hero's journey, for those of you that don't know, is it's what Luke Skywalker did, basically. Something tragic happens. He meets conflict. He goes on a journey. He learns something from it. I don't know if meeting your father is part of it, but there's a path to the hero's journey, and it involves that conflict and so forth. But did you have anything else to add after that?
No, that's primarily it. Just see a question like this. Make sure that you understand that even though our residency is a learning experience, it's a job. You're interviewing for an actual job. You will be receiving an actual paycheck. They are hiring you to do X, Y, and Z, and you are absolutely going to be a licensed pharmacist as contingent on your residency. So you do have to see it as the beginning of a career path as well. I think in the book, I probably say something like, I answer this with yes and yes, I think is my, let me cheat and look. Yeah, I did. So I said, I like to answer this with yes and yes.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Okay. Well, let's ask a softball question that actually can be incredibly difficult. So you told us you're not interested in a PGY2. What's your OneYear Golden? Where you come in July, you leave in July, or you leave at the end of June? Where do you see yourself?
My idea with my OneYear goal, so I don't want to do a PGY2. At this point
we all did PGY2s.
Yeah. No. So, I mean, and maybe I'm open to it. I'm open to changing my mind. What I want to set myself up for is flexibility more than anything. I want to me, if I learn the skills, what I will get out of 1 year of residency training is, I'm going to go on an ID rotation. I'm going to go on a transplant, on an oncology rotation. I'm going to have a practice management rotation. I'm going to be inserted and be expected to perform at the pharmacist at a high level for all of these things. And what I think I'm really going to get out of that is the ability to pick up basically anything, so that if my career takes me into such a path that an oncology specialist position opens up, even if I haven't done a PGY2, or maybe not a specialist, but a position in oncology or a position in transplant, or maybe my family decides they have to move. And, I have the skills necessary to transition what I've learned, to learn as a pharmacist, to learn on the job, to contribute, and to be a team player, and to get to help contribute where, anywhere that my career takes me. It gives me the flexibility to apply my skills and be a valued pharmacist, to actually add value to the wherever I'm working. That's what I want to get out of 1 year out of this.
Awesome. Okay, well, let's transition to the last section, which is personality related questions, and I'm going to adjust it a little bit just to kind of make it a little bit more of a softball, or maybe just make it a little more authentic. But so I'm a marathoner. Even though I'm a resident right now, I'm still getting my runs in. I get a long 2-hour run or 3-hour run there on Sunday. What is it that you like to do outside of the pharmacy? What do you do for fun?
So a few things. I am very active in a church group. And so we do a lot of youth mentoring where, obviously every Sunday, but we do stuff throughout the week as well. We'll have, it's with a youth group they're primarily between 12 and 14 years old, 12 and 15. And we'll go to the local basketball court, we'll organize a basketball game, or we'll have, a punch party or something, so we do things like that. I'm also a pretty avid guitar player. I played guitar since I was 13. I don't play in a band specifically right now, but I played in bands all through high school. I'll play an odd wedding or so for a friend here or there. So I really enjoy playing guitar, blues, rock, country, really anything. I love the instrument and the flexibility and the voice of it. So I like to spend a lot of free time there. And that's sort of my wind down is, a few minutes on the guitar can really just kind of reset my calm, at the end of the night.
Yeah. Churchill used to paint. He's dealing with World War II and he's off painting, and people are like, painting and just, if you have that kind of stress, you really do need a place where you do something completely different. And don't underestimate the opportunity to connect with someone there that has that same thing. And, for the 8 hours you have, someone else might remember, oh yeah, that was the runner. Oh yeah, that was the one with it. And they're really trying to make it so that they can remember you. And the one thing, besides some kind of mistake maybe you made, or, ketchup on the collar, whatever it is. But this is the one time that if you are authentic, that you're probably going to find someone else that has something similar, and they're going to remember you because of it. So let's go completely vague on the final question here. List some personal attributes that you would like to improve, and what have you done to improve them? So what's wrong with you?
I am flawless. So don't use that answer.
Oh, that's a flaw. Isn't that what Socrates said?
Ooh, brilliant. Yeah, we're getting philosophical tonight. So a few things. It's a blessing and a curse. I see things from a 10,000 foot view. And I always have. I see the big picture. I see how it all works together and how it all fits. And that is a wonderful thing for many, for studying for pharmacy school. That's what's gotten me here to this interview. It's done a lot of great things for me. At the same time, when you see from 10,000 feet, you sometimes miss a really important detail. And so while I don't necessarily get mired down in details all the time and get overwhelmed with, I can see where the system has to move, and I know how to prioritize. I might miss that, this happened a couple of times on a pharmacy test where I missed, which of the following is not indicated or something, I missed that one.
Circle the not, underline the not.
Yeah, I missed that all important word, and, it's the devil is in the details. So what I do, and it's just like you said, I take that pause, I pause for a minute. I briefly review before I answer the test question. I do, and I make sure, okay, here's what it says. There is no polarity word that changes it from not to or accept or anything. And then I answer. And so, the way I do it, I had to physically train myself to take a breath before either circling the Scantron, or some of our tests are on a computer now. Before I hit the submit button, I literally take a breath. It takes 1 second, and that's my reset to make sure I don't just go down some memorized neuro pathway and just click the button or circle the dot.
Okay, so we've gone through your document. The one thing I wanted to talk about, and then this is going to also segue into probably what our next conversation is going to be. And I may even chop this one in half because we've gone over an hour, and I'll probably release them both. I'll release them both in the same day, not to be like, okay, well, let's get downloads on this day and this day, but just so that I feel like they'll listen to the first part of it one time and then the second part more than one time. But this is the question that. Although when I read that document and we talked about it, they said that the College of Pharmacy you went to is very irrelevant. They're picking you on other issues. So where you are on U.S. News and World Report is quite irrelevant. However, NAPLEX scores have gone down quite a bit, and I didn't realize this until just a couple of days ago. I'd never actually bothered to look at it, and I've got the acronym right now. MPJE, the Multi-State Pharmacy Jurisprudence Exam, scores are all over the place. And I feel like because residencies are all over the place, when going from one state to another, it's harder to unlearn something than it necessarily would have been just to learn it if you'd never been, tainted with your home state. So how do you instill confidence in this group? Because I think they're going to use the PCOA soon, that Pharmacy Curricular Outcomes Assessment, to give a score to you as you're going through school, and that'll happen in the next couple years maybe. But how can you give them confidence? Let's say your college has an 80-85% pass rate on the NAPLEX, which is about average. How can you give them confidence that 45 days in, you're not going to have a bad conversation like, well, they let me take it again in another month and a half. So if you guys don't mind staffing and covering me now, that'd be cool. How can we better ourselves for the NAPLEX and MPJE?
What I recommend is take them as early as you can in the year, and that's setting yourself up during your fourth year, because for in a lot of states you have to get a fingerprint, and the Board of Pharmacy only meets once a month or whatever, and it just takes sometimes 45, 60 days to schedule a test. The earliest I could have taken the NAPLEX, I think, was June or July. I think July. And so just making sure all of your ducks in a row. And the first month of residency, you're not on most of the time you're doing like an orientation where you learn the computer system and, kind of the workflow and everything. So you if you can ever afford to really crunch study for the NAPLEX or the MPJE, now is the time to do it. I really, really encourage you trying to get it done as early as possible. Otherwise, it's, depending on where you go, the first few rotations, it's going to be a challenge, and I don't know. I don't have a great answer. And you just will have to find a way to fit it in. I use tools, RX Prep, for MPJE. TLDR has a nice little cheat sheet that we've made to help streamline your MPJE studying that you kind of fill out. We don't need to go into detail with it now, but use the tools that you have that might save you time. And really try to take it early and prepare. You're going to you graduate in early May, and you don't start residency until July. Use that time. I know you're tired,
Yeah.
And I know you want to rest up for residency, but study, get as much done while you have the time to do it, because it's only going to get worse, and future you will thank you to prepare now.
Okay. Yeah. I've talked to, I guess the take home I wanted to take from that, and we'll talk about the MPJE in a different podcast episode, but I've heard people blow it off as, kind of irrelevant. It's just the law. It'll be fine. And the failures that I hear are not by a lot of points. You still lose a game by 1 point. Yeah. You still fail the MPJE by 1 point. I passed it by 1 point. So I never hear anybody going, oh, I crushed it.
I was emailed today by someone that failed it twice by 1 point. He got a 74 both times.
Oh my gosh!
And I'm like, yeah, it breaks my heart. That's the email I got today.
Okay, well, we'll talk about that another time. All right, well, Brandon, thanks for being on the Pharmacy Leaders podcast, and we'll definitely have you back for the MPJE as people are studying for that.
All right, thanks, Tony. Hey, what up? This is Brandon Dyson from TLDRpharmacy.com. Why am I interrupting you in the middle of this excellent podcast? Because as soon as you're finished with it, I want you to come to my website, obviously. At TLDRpharmacy.com, you'll find a whole boatload of free clinical guides and cheat sheets. They'll save you hours of time, and they'll make learning pharmacy easy. And also, look, our guides are fun. Whether you're a student or a practicing pharmacist, you'll enjoy reading them, I promise. Check out TLDRpharmacy.com and get better at pharmacy.
Support for this episode comes from the audiobook Memorizing Pharmacology, a relaxed approach. With over 9,000 sales in the United States, United Kingdom, and Australia, it's the go-to resource to ease the pharmacology challenge. Available on Audible, iTunes, and Amazon.com, in print, ebook, and audiobook. Thank you for listening to the Pharmacy Leaders Podcast with your host, Tony Guerra. Be sure to share the show with the hashtag #PharmacyLeaders.